Here are the top 10 OpenClaw alternatives. Nanobot gives you a personal AI assistant that can run chat, search the web, and call tools without dragging in a huge stack. The practical bit is the workflow. Install it fast, point it at a model provider, then let one lightweight agent handle everyday tasks or spin up multiple instances when you need separation. I think the real point is how little ceremony there is, even with extras like MCP tool hookups and web search living in the same loop. AnythingLLM gives you a local workspace where you can drop in docs, chat across them, and run agents without a bunch of setup drama. The part that feels distinct is the hub vibe. You pick your model, plug in an embedding model and a vector database for retrieval, and keep that whole flow on your machine if you want. That makes it pretty practical for private team knowledge, especially with multi-user support and self-hosting built in. ZeroClaw gives you a personal AI assistant stack. You can drop onto basically any machine, then wire into the channels and tools you already use. The practical hook is the operator flow. Install it fast, bootstrap an agent, swap parts as needed, and keep the whole thing lightweight enough for cheap hardware instead of a dedicated desktop box. I think the real point is that it makes autonomy feel operational, without auth for accounts and default DM-based access controls. PicoClaw gives you a full AI assistant that can chat, run one-shot agent tasks, and expose a web console on really small hardware. The pitch that feels distinct here is how seriously it takes edge deployment. Old Android phones, sub 10 MB RAM, fast boot, and pre-built binaries across a bunch of CPU types, so this seems aimed at devices you'd normally leave out. That makes the automation angle feel fairly practical when the host machine is a $10 board or a retired phone. SuperAGI is a full-stack environment for building and running autonomous agents with more of an ops dashboard feel than a single agent script. The distinct bit is how much surface area it tries to cover at once. Toolkits, a marketplace, cloud hooks, and an architecture that suggests you're managing agents as ongoing systems, not just prompting one into a task. That's fairly practical, but it also means setup and orchestration look heavier than the lightweight copy-paste crowd. NanoClaw gives you a chat-connected AI assistant that can live in WhatsApp, Telegram, Slack, Discord, Gmail, and similar inboxes while keeping each agent isolated in its own container. The smaller story here is pretty practical. Instead of a giant operator setup, you get fast, sandboxed agents, memory, scheduled jobs, and a workflow that feels easier to reason about when you want to customize behavior. It runs on Anthropic's Agents SDK, and right now the container path is geared to macOS, Apple Silicon, and Windows WSL. OpenFang gives you a single runtime for agents that can actually take actions across apps and channels, not just chat back. What stands out is the workflow. It ships with bundled hands for real tasks, then layers and adapters for things like messaging and provider switching, so you can picture an agent receiving a request, choosing a tool, and pushing work outward. It feels fairly practical if you want one binary coordinating WhatsApp, multiple model backends, and an OpenAI-compatible API. NemoClaw runs OpenClaw as a sandboxed, always-on assistant inside NVIDIA OpenShell, with managed inference handling the model side. The workflow is pretty practical. You install the stack, onboard an agent, then chat with it, while OpenShell sits between the agent and the host, so actions are more contained. I think the NVIDIA angle matters because this is really a deployment story, pairing Nematron class models with protection layers, and it's still alpha with behavior and APIs likely to change. IronClaw gives you a secure personal AI assistant you can run with a pretty hands-on operator workflow. The practical path here is install it. Choose whether to download or build, wire up the database and model provider, then let it keep memory and stay available like a background system instead of a one-shot chat. The Rust direction feels deliberate, and the real differentiator is how much attention goes to sandboxing, prompt injection defense, and data protection while still supporting different model backends. Mimiclaw gives you a personal AI assistant running on a tiny ESP32 board with setup and chat handled through Telegram instead of a full computer. The distinct bit is how stripped down the workflow is. Power it over USB, get it on Wi-Fi, then manage behavior through serial commands and simple config rather than babysitting Linux services. It also leans into continuity with a dedicated memory section, which feels pretty practical on hardware this small. Subscribe to Build Things with AI for more GitHub AI tool roundups.